Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mini Books Podcast with your host Gloria and Rogan, and today we are excited to dive into Special Book with You. We picked this one because it has really important lessons to share and we can't wait to talk about them. So let's get started.
Okay, so you want to know how to really make the most of your 20s. We're diving into Meg Jay's The Defining Decade. Focusing on work and relationships, which I think is something we can all relate to. It's funny, I always thought of my 20s as kind of like a waiting room before real life started. But this book totally changed my view on that.
Yeah, what's so cool about Jay is how she brings in all this psychological research, but then makes it real with these stories from her clients. It's not just theory. It's like, here's how our brains actually work during this time.
Yeah, and like that whole 30's the new 20 thing.
Yeah.
For a while, I was like, sweet, I can put off adulting for a bit longer. But Jay's saying, yeah, we're settling down later. But that actually makes our 20s prime time, not a time to waste.
Totally. She even compares it to how crucial those early years are for language development. There's this window where your brain's really primed for certain kinds of growth. And if you miss it, it's not like you can't learn later. It's just way harder.
It's like that story Jay tells about her client. She hits 30 and is like, wait, where did the time go?
Yeah.
She wishes she had made different choices. And she does turn things around, but it's a struggle. Like she's playing catch up with herself.
And that's where this idea of identity capital comes in, which I think is so key. It's like this, every job you have, every relationship skill you learn, it all goes into this bank of you, and you carry that with you.
So it's not just about having a job to pay rent. It's about how that job, even if it's not glamorous, is shaping who you are.
Exactly. Even those kind of random jobs Jay had after college. She worked for Outward Bound at one point, and even that, she says, taught her skills that she used later in her dream career.
It's like investing in your future self. But in your 20s, it's like seed funding,
Yeah.
You might not see the payoff for a while. But how do you even know what to invest in? I know for me, back then, I just kind of drifted, hoping for like a lightning bolt of inspiration.
Well, along with building that identity capital, Jay says we got to tap into our weak ties. It's where sociology gets really useful, actually.
Right. Weak ties. Remind me what those are again and why they're so important.
You think about people you're not super close with, like old classmates, someone from a volunteer project you did, maybe a distant relative. They're not in your usual bubble.
So your close friends are probably in the same boat as you, right? But how do you reach out to those weak ties without it being awkward? Hey, remember that pottery class we took? Can you give me a job?
It's about the approach. Jay talks about these two people, Cole and Betsy, both kind of stuck in their careers. They run into each other at a party, and that chance meeting helps them both level up.
It's true. Sometimes it's not who you know is who they know. Like that saying, your network is your net worth. But it's the unexpected connections that can really make a difference. Okay, so we were talking about building that identity capital and how important those weak ties can be for our careers. But what about our love lives? In your 20s, you're trying to figure out what you want in a partner long term. It's a whole other thing.
Totally. And Jay does not hold back. Remember that whole age 30 deadline everyone freaks out about? She talks about how that can make people rush into things for all the wrong reasons, which makes sense.
Or the flip side. You're like, nope, I'm too young to settle down. It's like you're either sprinting towards commitment or running away from it. There's no middle ground.
Right. And this is where she blew my mind. She challenges this whole cohabitation as a test drive thing.
Wait, really? Because that's the standard advice now, right? Try before you buy, all that.
Oh, totally. But Jay actually cites all this research that suggests it could actually make you more likely to get divorced. There are even studies that say couples who live together before marriage, they have a way higher chance of splitting up.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. So you're saying moving in together could actually make it harder to end up with the right person.
It's this thing she calls the lock-in effect. Couples move in together, it's convenient, maybe it saves money, but then even if they're not right for each other long term, it's harder to break up. You've got the shared stuff, maybe pets, a lease.
All those sunk costs.
Yeah.
They become reasons to stay even if you have a bad feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the practical stuff. It can really mess with you emotionally if you're living together before you've really committed. It's harder to know, am I choosing this person or just going with the flow?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're making this huge life decision based on logistics, not actual compatibility, which is kind of backwards when you think about it.
Right. So it's like, if cohabitating isn't the answer, then what is? What's the better way to approach dating in your 20s that actually sets you up for, like, relationship success later on?
Yeah, what does Jay recommend? Because we got to do something right.
She talks a lot about being intentional. It's not about rushing to get married, but it's not about avoiding relationships either. It's more like taking the time to really understand yourself, what you value, what you truly want in a partner, and then going out and dating with that knowledge.
So it's kind of like building that identity capital, but in your relationships too.
Yeah.
You got to know who you are before you can find someone who fits with that.
Exactly. And she says, don't get caught up on superficial things. Who cares what they look like or their job or whatever? Look deeper. Are they kind? Do you share those core values? Sorry to interrupt you guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to check out our official YouTube channel, Mini Books Podcast, and subscribe for more great podcasts like this one. Can you actually picture yourself building a future with them, not just having fun in the moment?
It's so easy to get swept up in that new relationship excitement, but it's those deeper things that matter. Like, do you even want the same things long term? That's got to be important.
Absolutely. It's like, she says, it's like building a house. You wouldn't just throw up a fancy facade without a good foundation, right? You've got to have the structure underneath it.
I love that analogy. It really puts it in perspective. But here's the thing. Even when you know what you should be doing, making those intentional choices, it's hard, especially in your 20s. Everyone feels like they're just figuring it out as they go.
Totally. And that's where Jay brings in another layer, and it's all about, like, your brain.
Oh, right. She talks about how our 20s are this time of huge brain development, right?
Yeah.
Like in the frontal lobe especially.
Which, if you remember from Psych 101, that's the part of your brain that handles all the executive function stuff, planning, decision-making, not being totally impulsive, all the skills you need to actually, like, adult.
So, like, it's not that we can't make good decisions in our 20s. It's more like there's still construction going on upstairs,
Yeah.
like literally.
Yeah, it's like our brains haven't fully baked yet, which, I don't know, kind of makes me feel better about some of the choices I made back then. It's like, oh, my frontal lobe was just a little undercooked.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so cool about how Jay presents it. It's not like, oh, you messed up your 20s, too bad, game over. It's more like, okay, your brain is still super adaptable right now, so let's work with that.
Right, like we have this incredible power to shape who we're becoming. All those choices we make, the experiences we have, they're literally changing our brains. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It is. It's exciting and also a little bit, like no pressure, but the decisions you're making right now, they really do matter.
And that's where that whole 30 is the new 20 thing can actually be a good thing, but only if we actually use our 20s as this time to learn and grow, not just, like you said, delay real life from starting.
Yeah, totally. And one thing Jay talks about that really stuck with me is this idea of like picturing your ideal 30s. If you could fast forward 10 years, what would you want your life to look like? What would you be doing? Who would you be with?
Right.
What kind of work would get you excited to get out of bed in the morning? Who are those people you really want in your life? The ones you've built those strong relationships with? And honestly, who would you want to be? Like, what kind of qualities do you want to cultivate?
It's like creating a vision board, but for your whole life. And then the trick is taking that big picture and breaking it down. What are those smaller steps you can take now to get there? Totally. It could be something big, like reaching out to someone in your network, maybe taking on a new project at work, or even just smaller things, like actually having that tough conversation you've been putting off, or even just taking some time each week to think about what you want, what's important to you.
It all goes back to making those deposits in your identity capital account, right? Like each step might feel small, but over time, it really adds up.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so empowering about this whole idea. We're not just passive bystanders in our own lives. We have the power to shape our future. It just takes a little intentionality.
So to wrap up this deep dive, instead of dreading that big three, oh, what if we thought of it as the start of our glory days? Like we've spent our 20s building that solid foundation, and now we get to enjoy it.
I love that. It's a total mindset shift. Like you're not just waiting for life to happen to you. You're out there making it happen. It's exciting.
So for everyone listening, what's one small step you can take this week to move a little bit closer to that vision? Think about it. And with that, that's a wrap for this deep dive.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to dive into more book insights and key learnings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mini Books Podcast, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're back every Sunday at 9 a.m. with new books and more to learn from. Until next time, take care, keep learning, and keep growing. Remember, this is Mini Books Podcast.